Hi, there's a really great YouTube channel called Four Color Commentary. They've got a contest going to tell your origin story. How did you turn into the person you are today? So, all the origin stories have tragedy and drama and humor. And there's no origin story that's all happy. I don't think. Not that I can think of. But I'm going to tell you my story, and I don't know. You can listen or not. But I kind of live outside of time. And I know that sounds pretentious, but yes, it's 2020, but it's also every year that's wonderful in my past and in the world before I was born. I am a historian. I love the past. There's a lot of great stuff about today, but a lot of horrible stuff about today. Uh, I mean, my parents, God bless them, have passed away. But I'm in a way so grateful that I don't have this image in my mind. I never saw them wearing masks, and I know that many people say the mask help, or maybe just psychologically help people feel that they're not spreading this thing that's not supposed to be mentioned on YouTube. But to me, it's something. When I see people wearing them, it, this is kind of controversial, but it seems like it takes away their self-respect. It makes you look weak, and that may be by design. I don't know, but I'm just glad I never saw my parents that way. It's a horror. Really, it's pretty horrible in 2020. Let's face it. Number one singing recording artist is Cardi B with a song "Wet Ass Pussy," but I think the Marvel films are great today. Um, there's some good television, I guess. Some good. Uh, what is good about today? 2020. I'll get back to you on that. But there were times that I've lived through where things were far, far better. And at the time, I thought they weren't very good. But looking back at the early to mid 70s, you turn on the radio and there were radio stations, they'd play a rock song, then a country song, and then a soul song. It was top 40 AM radio, and they played everything, and it was all good, and it was all mixed together. But as far as my origin story, okay, so I'm born in 1965. My father's in the Army. My mother is a housewife. She met my father, who was from Philadelphia, in San Antonio. He came there for training or something, met her. She was a school teacher. They got married. She immediately stopped school teaching because that's what women did in the early 50s. They married and stopped working. And my two older brothers are born in the 50s, 53, 54, or was it 54, 56? They were 10 years before me. Then I come along. So here I am, 4 years old, and they're like middle school age, junior high school age. And I look up to them, and they're cool, and what they do is cool to me. And my oldest brother collected trains, in-scale trains. And I remember in San Antonio, because we were living in San Antonio at the time, there was a store called Dick's Hobby Shop. And it had model kits, and I loved trains because he loved trains. And I remember the first comic book I ever bought was called Choo Choo Charlie. It's a little kid that had his own train. He was actually from a TV commercial for Good and Plenty candy. I've got that comic book here. I don't have my original, but I bought a copy on eBay about 10 years ago, and I dig it out and show it to you. But I'm still in the process of this reorganization, and it's getting better, but it's not where it needs to be yet. So It's somewhere here, trust me. Choo Choo Charlie. You can look it up on MySpace, mycomicshop.com, and see what it looks like. I mean, it's just important to me because it was my first comic. Choo Choo Charlie. So I love trains, right? My older brother had a collection of Model Railroader magazine. I love that. So I saw these cool model kits in the hobby shop when we went there. I wonder if any of you live in San Antonio, if you remember Dick's Hobby Shop. If I doubt it's still there. Nothing good stays, just like that stupid poem. Nothing gold stays. Okay, so at some point, I guess I'm four. My father gets orders, and we're going to Germany. So we're living in Germany, not in a German community, but you've got to understand you've got a U.S. United States Army base, a post there, and you live there in what look like apartments, the base quarters, and everyone speaks English. The only time you see someone that speaks German, maybe someone comes out to repair your refrigerator. You're in a little pocket of the United States there, but it's the United States circa the many decades past because it's tiny. You've got one movie theater that circulates movies throughout the week, just like theaters did in the 40s and 50s in the U.S. But here it is, 1970. We didn't have television. There was German language television. We didn't think we had American television, so we lived without TV. So you had the radio, you had the movie theater, which played movie serials just like in the 40s. The Army base theater ran movie serials. In fact, at Christmas time, they actually ran, and I saw it theatrically projected. There's not many people that have seen Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the Rankin Bass TV special. I saw it on a big screen in the theater. I remember the first movie I saw at night was called Zeppelin. I think with Michael York, that was later in Logan's Run. So you get an idea of the time period. There was a little store. Well, there was a really good bookstore there near the Base Exchange, and they had a huge rack of comics. They weren't on a spinner rack. They were all laid out like magazines, and it went wall to wall magazines and comics. And there was Famous Monsters and Mad, and I was focused on monsters as a kid. And I would see the Famous Monsters, and I would see Mad Magazine and Cracked Magazine, and these all attracted my attention. And I would show my mom, can I buy this? I'm like 5 years old. And she would flip through it and approve it. Usually she'd say no, and sometimes she'd say yes. But there couldn't be anything objectionable in it. Like, for instance, there was one Mad magazine I remember that showed a photograph of the White House. And on the gate of the White House was a sign that said, "This country is out of order." And my mom was really indignant about that because my dad's in the Army. He'd been in Vietnam. And she just didn't like this disrespectful to the country attitude. So, and if I showed her any magazine where a monster magazine, she really didn't like any injury to the eyes, so like the Amazing Colossal Man, right? He's got like one eye that's just an empty black socket, his eyeball's gone. She hated that because she had an injury to her eye as a young mother when my oldest brother was a baby, and his flailing around, and I guess his fingernail must have cut across her eye, and so she didn't want to see any injury to eyes. So then I would be not allowed to get that. Dennis the Menace, I love that. She'd let me buy that sometimes, but she really didn't like that Dennis the Menace didn't speak with proper grammar because she had been a teacher and she didn't want me to pick that up. She was aware that children imitated, so she was afraid to let me watch although the Three Stooges wasn't airing there in Germany. So I know what it's like to live in the 1940s with a movie theater, with movie serials, Saturday matinees, only entertainment you've got are comic books, toys, and the radio. I kind of lived the experience that my parents did as children for a year or so. So I had that perspective of growing up in the 40s. I'm checking my notes like Joe Biden here. But then I also had the experience of growing up in the 50s, because at a certain point my dad realized there was a U.S. Army, Air Force, whatever, TV station, but it was far away, like, I don't know, Ramstein or something. And he thought, well, what if I put up an antenna way up on the top floor of the building? Because we were in, like, I think there were 3 or 4 stories in this base quarters apartment style looking complex we were in. So he climbed up on the roof, put up an antenna. No one else had thought to do this. Everyone just keeping their TVs in storage, or they didn't unpack them because they realized, what's the point? And he picked up that station. And then everyone started putting up TV antennas. So, but it was only one TV station. And what it would do is it would show you the certain shows they gotten from the United States, but from different networks. So you might have, like on Saturday night, they ran Star Trek, and this is like 1970, 71. This is before Star Trek really came back in syndication and became super popular in the United States, which was around 73. 73, it started to be syndicated like everywhere in the U.S., and then it became hugely popular. And then NBC really felt like fools for canceling it a few years before, because it exploded. I remember when I was in elementary school in 73, 74, Star Trek model kits were everywhere. You couldn't get them. They had to be on a waiting list at the hobby store. And then they had the animated cartoon. But I remember they showed Captain America and the Hulk cartoons, the 1966 Marvel superheroes cartoons. They ran those. They ran, I think, the Cosby Show. They ran Julia. They ran the Partridge Family, All in the Family. They ran a bunch of old John Wayne type movies. The Flintstones, Sesame Street. I was the first generation of Sesame Street, so I was there when they first aired, in 1969, the very first episode. So Sesame Street, we got that. But it was, a mixture, because these were from all 3 different networks and from PBS, and they just picked and chose and put on this channel whatever the best they thought of American TV. So we had one channel basically, or we could turn on the German channels, and I could watch Porky Pig and Friends in German. That wasn't that fun. But what was cool over there is they would have, on Saturday night, they'd run 2 hours of American commercials, and that was the biggest rated show, because the commercials in the United States they thought were so cool, they would just watch a 2-hour block of commercials, and every 3 commercials or so, they'd have a little cartoon that lasted 5-6 seconds of Smurf-looking guys running around. Might have been the Smurfs before they came to the U.S. And that was like the biggest show, just watching the current American commercials. But so on Saturday nights, my brother's was like a senior in high school. His friend would come over, because he didn't have a television hooked up in his apartment, and they'd watch Star Trek about 7 o'clock every Saturday night. And so I thought, wow, again, I was influenced by my older brother, and I know he was reading Justice League and stuff, and everything that my older brothers did was so cool. They had a big Foot Locker full of Tonka trucks, I remember. I don't know if those wound up being brought over to Germany from San Antonio. I don't remember seeing them there. And there was supposed to be a big Foot Locker full of comic books, but I think that all got left behind in San Antonio and never came to Germany, because otherwise I would have inherited that stuff. Oh, and he had all these plastic green army men, and he'd lay them all out on the floor, and we'd shoot rubber band guns and if a soldier got knocked over, they were dead, or if one of the plastic tanks was knocked over. That was considered destroyed. And I played Risk with him and Booby Trap and all these games. And I really looked up to my oldest brother, Steve. He passed away about 10 years ago. He worked for years for the phone company and came up with patents and all this. And then he was working for Homeland Security and helped out people in Haiti a whole lot during one of the hurricanes. And but yeah, he passed away. He had a heart attack while he was driving on the highway, and he managed to get his truck off the highway and not hurt anyone. And he ran right up against the guardrail, and people just were passing by and thought he had just parked there. Didn't realize, so no one was calling for help. I have another brother that's still alive, but a few years ago, well, we were having trouble with money, and I mentioned it to him, and he just out of nowhere, as a Christmas present, gave us like $1,000, and then after that, I think I borrowed a little money from him, and I was supposed to pay him back, and I didn't have the money, and he said, no, could just consider that a wedding gift, and so my wife had surgery, real serious surgery, and she called him up because my brother was very Christian, and she wanted to talk with him and get some solace from him, let him know I just had surgery, and I guess she left. I guess she texted him or left him. Anyway, she texted back, "Do not contact me again." I guess he thought she was asking for money because we'd asked for money before. So I don't know what he said. I have enough trouble with my own family. I don't need. But she is your family, and she says, well, he didn't mean you. He not contact him. He meant I'm not supposed to contact him. And I said, well, look, we're married, so we're one person, and I don't know what was going on. I feel horrible because my mom and dad have both passed away now, and my oldest brother's passed away, and I don't have contact with his family, and now my middle brother that is, I guess I'm estranged from him. Yeah, but anyway, so I would look up to my older brothers, and I would, but when I went, so they influenced me in that way. But they were both off to college by the time I was like in elementary school, and so I grew up kind of an only child from that point on. I really started collecting comic books, and let's see. Oh, at a certain point, I started to realize that my older brother and his friend watching Star Trek, it made me think, well, this is a really cool thing to be into Star Trek and be into comic books. And then I soon realized, no, actually the people into comics and Star Trek are like, they're like pariahs. I didn't realize that, but I realized that soon. And when I went to my first convention, I really realized, I thought this was all cool. But it doesn't make you cool. Maybe it does today, but no, not at that time. Let's see. Got to look at my Joe Biden notes. Okay. Yeah. Oh, so on these newsstands in this this U.S. Army base bookstore in Heidelberg, I would see the Monster Times. I would see all of the wonderful magazines of the time. And there was something that fixated me on one issue, and it is right here. And I just wanted this so badly. This is my actual childhood copy. The Biggest, Greatest Crack. It's probably something you wouldn't even notice it was in a dollar bin. And but it was so important to me. It's the 7th big issue of Biggest, Greatest Crack, and I must have been in kindergarten, and I told my mom, go back and get that comic. It's like, did you get it? The next day she'd pick me up, or I'd come home from school, whatever. Did you buy it? And she bought it. And this was my first exposure to Crack magazine, and and I just love the John Severin art, And it was just, there's just something that attracted me to this. And it's reprints of Cracked magazine from the 60s is what it is, and maybe late 50s. It just was something super important to me, and I got it. And so I'm into Mad and Cracked and Dennis the Menace and monster stuff. And I love all this stuff. Then we move. Then my dad gets orders to move to Hampton, Virginia. So we go there, and then I start buying more and more Marvel, and that's when Marvel starts to expand. Tomb of Dracula starts coming out, Werewolf by Night, and all the horror reprint titles. Well, DC had Ghost. I love that. Anytime there's a skeleton on the cover, I loved it. DC had Ghost and House of Secrets and House of Mystery. In the day we were leaving Hampton, Virginia, to go back to San Antonio for 2 years, Plop #1 came out. And Plop #1 really changed my life. And a few months before that, Mad had reprinted some of their EC issues, or they had a little supplement in the magazine that reprinted in color EC comics with Super Duper Man and everything, and that blew my mind. And then I was at the newsstand and I saw I thought it was a news magazine. It's called National Lampoon. I thought it was like National Review or Time, and it was the violence issue, and it had someone like slipping on blood. Someone had been stabbed on the front cover. As a cartoon, I've opened it up, and they have a Tom and Jerry parody called Kitten Caboodle, which the cat and the mouse are fighting, but everything they do has real consequences, and there's blood and legs being cut off and everything, like Itchy and Scratchy would later do. I'm positive that Itchy and Scratchy was influenced by that issue of National Lampoon. So it's like my mind started to get blown by Plop, by Mad, by Cracked, by National Lampoon. I was starting to see it on the newsstand, although obviously I couldn't buy it. I was too young. And monster stuff. So we moved to San Antonio, and somehow I wind up getting a copy of the Marvel Treasury Edition, the second one, with the Fantastic Four, and I read it. And it's got the Galactus trilogy in it, edited, but it's there. And it's Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. And then I start to realize, all this other Marvel stuff beyond Werewolf by Night and Tomb of Dracula and Vault of Evil and their 50s horror reprints that they were putting out at the time. This is all great. So I started reading Spider-Man and all the superhero stuff. And that's when it all fell into place. And I joined FOOM, the Friends of Old Marvel, the Marvel fan club. And I just became, and I had friends at school that were really into comic books, and we started making our own, and I showed those about a week ago if you go back in the videos, and we created our own comic book company, and we draw them on notebook paper and tape them together, and I showed you all of my whole collection of those a while back. So that's kind of where it came from, my obsession. Then so I'm collecting comics. In the summer of 77, the same summer that Star Wars came out, in the newspaper there's an article. There was a comic book store opening up in my town, Arlington, Texas, and it was being opened by Buddy Saunders, who it said was an ex-art teacher here locally. And so I went there. It was a little small store about the size of the room I'm in, and then I was able to really expand, and actually that's when I started buying old National Lampoons, because they would sell them to me. The employees would. I don't think Buddy Saunders ever did, but I think it was probably a little too young, but I loved them, and my sense of humor was forever changed. So I remember being in Lone Star Comics once and heard a horrible story. They were talking about a collection of Golden Age comics. This is in the late 70s. And I'm just a kid there shopping, going through the comics, and I'm listening to the two guys behind the counter talking, and they're talking about someone was in a horrible car accident on the way to a convention or something, and the comics were very valuable. And I guess the guy had been killed. And they were talking about how someone had to clean. You can skip past this if you got a weak stomach. But they were cleaning blood and hair off the comics. So that's why it's important to bag those comics, folks. Just kidding. No, so if you ever get an old Golden Age comic and it's got brown stains on it, it could have been from that incident. I don't know if anyone knows anything about that. Maybe that's something that's famous in collecting circles. Um, let's see. Yeah, my father was a full colonel in the Army when he retired. He retired here in Arlington, Texas, and I've been stuck here ever since. For 1 year, I lived in Longview, Texas. But we're thinking about moving and going, because Virginia has always seemed like home to me. And I kind of would like to live in that area with the Blue Ridge Mountains, or West Virginia, or Kentucky. It's just, on my mom's side of the family, we're supposed to be related to Robert E. Lee. So, and then on her side of the family, her family was one of the first 100 families to come into Texas. They call them the Old 100, I think, or is it the Old 300? I don't know, something. But something about it just makes me want. I haven't lived in Virginia since second grade, but something is calling me back there. I just retired, and wanting to get a bigger house for less money, less property taxes. So we're going to move somewhere. We're looking all over the place. So if you've got an idea of a great place that doesn't flood, that doesn't have hurricanes, maybe has great comic stores, maybe it's the town you live in, give us some advice. Maybe you know of someone selling a house next door. Let us know, because we're wanting it to be under 200,000, so that I could. We could sell what I've got and have some money left over in the bank. Yeah, my parents passed away. My father was in the hospital, and at one point he started bleeding out of every pore of his body. And they didn't know what was going on. And my brother was there, my oldest brother. He said it looked like the Christ after he'd been flogged or whatever. His blood blood was coming out of everywhere. And my father whispered hemorrhagic fever, that he had that during the Korean War. And anyway, we thought he was gone. I mean, basically, they told us he wasn't going to live. I remember being out on the balcony at the hospital, and I mourned him then. I mean, but he got well, and he lived another 2 years. And then he got sick in the summer of 2006 and passed away. But what is weird, and I still have dreams where it's like all of a sudden he's there, and it's like, well, wait, because it's like I can't process, because I mourned him, and then he continued to live, and then it disconnects in my head. So in a way, I expect him to still be alive. And my mom passed away in the summer of 2001, right before September 11th happened, and that was very rough. And so, and then my oldest brother, and so I just have my wife now and her family and a few friends. And when my wife went down to help her family after they went through a horrible hurricane in Houston, and their house flooded. They had 6 feet of water in their house and had to be rescued by a canoe. She went down there to help for several months, and that's when I started to watch YouTube very, just all the time. And that's when I discovered Captain Strangeliffe and Silver Age Dave, and it's like, wow, these are like family members. And when Captain Strangeliffe doesn't post for a long time, I worry. Well, wonder. I hope he's okay. I hope everyone's okay. Well, I haven't posted in a while, and I feel like it's family. YouTube is a wonderful thing in that sense, and it's almost something that seems too good to be true. And I don't know if YouTube is going to still be around for how much longer. It's really too good to be true to be able to go, and any song that's ever been recorded pretty much is there. I think someone's going to crack down on it. I think it gives people too much freedom of speech, and I think there are people that find that dangerous. And if the wrong person gets into office, YouTube could change radically and disappear. So I try to record as much as I can. The stuff I love, I record off of YouTube, just like someone would with a VCR. I record out of the Roku box through a little converter to the RCA plugs going into an old DVD recorder. They don't sell those anymore because they don't want you to record. They don't want you to own anything. They want you to stream everything and keep paying every month. But I'm a historian and I like to own things, and it drives my wife crazy. I had and I've lost my beloved dog Daisy, passed away, and my dog, my cat Princess, passed away after being given a rabies shot. So I think it was, she just had a reaction to it. She was older, and now I have two cats and a dog. I have a beagle named Drew, and a cat named Alan, and a cat named Pete. And pets are wonderful, especially if you're lonely. I would recommend getting a pet. What else did I write down? Boy, these notes are crazy all over the place. Junior high school was a fucking horrible experience. That was a wake-up call. I was doing pretty well in elementary school. Boy, I'm really tired this morning. I stayed up watching the debate last night. I didn't get much sleep last night, and I didn't really see it under my eyes there. Well, in elementary school, I got glasses. And I remember walking into the cafeteria that morning before school, and with my glasses on for the first time, and just laughter all across the cafeteria. And that was before I was pretty popular, and then I was. You wear glasses and you're hated, and instantly. And then I got contact lenses in high school, and then people started to like me again. It's weird. Our culture is such that if you have glasses, people assume you're intelligent, and people that are intelligent are hated. And I've had students that have told me, I just can't wear I can't see anything. And I said, put your glasses on. They hide them or they break them. They just anything but to wear them. And I said, the glasses. I later realized I should never have gotten contact lenses because glasses are the greatest thing. If someone really likes you with the glasses, then you know they're a real friend. Because if someone likes you, then you put on glasses, they don't like you anymore. They never were a friend. They're phony. So glasses screen out all these years of possible misery of having friends that are just fake and superficial. So you might as well just get glasses that are clear lenses, just to screen out the scum. I didn't use the word scum. All right, what else did I write down? Yeah, so anyway, I stopped buying as many comics there in the late 80s and started collecting a lot of other stuff, monster toys and records, and I started buying a lot of stuff. I'd still buy the older comics, but new comics kind of got disenchanted with them. The 90s were kind of a horrible time for new comics. And now it's just like there's 50 different variant covers for one comic. That would drive me crazy. I have to fight against obsessive compulsive disorder, and I've done pretty well, but I can't imagine a collector with that disorder of needing to get every different variant cover. That should just be one cover. Maybe occasionally have I just don't like the idea because Fear number 3. This is the only cover for Fear number 3. I don't have to worry. So if I'm looking for Fear number 3, I'm going to look for this cover, right? With Zutak, the thing that shouldn't exist. I don't have to worry about there's another cover or there's a foil cover. There's this cover. This is a childhood copy. I traded with a friend for this. I'm going to talk about this in another video. It's why it's in my pile here. I don't like all that stuff. It drives me crazy. I don't like seeing comics graded and sealed up. But to each their own, I guess. So as far as my origin story, I exist out of time. I know what it was like in the 1940s without television and just having comic books and toys. I know what it was like in the 50s, in the early days of television, where people from the neighborhood would come over because you had the only television and you didn't have many stations. I know what it's like growing up in the 60s, because I was kind of there. I certainly know what it's like growing up in the 70s and every decade since, which haven't been that unique. It's, to me, the 1950s were the Lex Interior said this once, the lead singer of the band The Cramps. He said the 1950s were the height of culture in the Western world. And when you hear a politician say the 50s were a terrible time, or you hear these comedians say it, it's not true. I wasn't alive then, but that was a wonderful time for people of all socioeconomic status. I know there were problems, but overall people lived better. The 60s were a wonderful time, except for things that LBJ did that created problems for many people in society, getting the, rules that to get welfare, the father can't be in the home, so it split up families and it destroyed a lot of the family unit. And the Vietnam War was, a lot of wars seem to start, I don't want to get too political, but a lot of wars seem to start when Democrats are president. There, I am getting political, but you can unsubscribe if you want. I love comic books. I'm really into it now. I've gotten the bug, and right now the bug is for Silver Age and Bronze Age too. But when I pick up I was just showing this in another video. Like, I got this a couple weeks ago, and this is like a drug to me. The fact that I own this now, and it's not a key issue. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's just having this. To me, this is just, it makes me so happy. And you just have to be someone like me to understand that. Oh, let's see what else. I pulled out these old, I have a box of old crack magazines. So, this is, wow. This is the first actual issue I got. Oh, look at that. Okay, I'll show you this. People are wondering about these stars. That's the star they stamp on it when you buy it at an army base. And people are wondering, well, some kid must have had a stamp set. No, I can confirm. I remember they would stamp this. It shows that it's been sold. So it's basically showing that, I guess it's not shoplifted. I don't know. Oh, this one is not one I bought in my childhood. I bought it later. But just look at these monsters. John Severin was the greatest. I mean, but Marie Severin, his sister, was freaking amazing too. That family's incredible. And then think about the Buscema family, John Buscema, and then his His brother was brother Sal Buscema, but John Buscema's granddaughter is amazing too. Look up Stephanie Buscema. Look up her artwork. Some families just got it. Anyway, I've ranted long enough. I'm up to the 40-minute mark. I'm going to go see if James Comey is being interrogated by the Senate yet, that son of a bitch. And I will bid you a fair farewell.